At a news conference in Turkey, CBS News foreign affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan asked the president if he underestimated ISIS's abilities.
No, we haven't underestimated our abilities. This is precisely why we're in Iraq as we speak and why we're operating in Syria as we speak. If you have a handful of people who don't mind dying, they can kill a lot of people. That's one of the challenges of terrorism.
Heritage Foundation Vice President of Foreign and Defense Policy Studies, James Carafano, is with us from Washington. James, thanks for being with us. As we just heard, President Obama defended his strategy against ISIS. Do you think that strategy is working?
Well, we don't have a lot of evidence for that. If you look at the bombing campaign, Senator Feinstein the other day said there have probably been over 8,000 bombing runs. So we've seen a sustained bombing campaign. And it's very difficult to show any area where, because of that campaign, ISIS has been materially degraded. There have been tactical reversals on the ground, but this morning I was actually on the internet and just trolling over past history of the last 2 years. And ISIS has had tactical reversals on the ground before, and they've either reversed those reversals or they found other areas to make success. So if you look at the number of foreign fighters flowing in, the numbers are up, not down by most estimates. If you look at ISIS's ability to go on the offensive, to increase its transnational terrorist presence, that's gone up, not down as well. So I don't see a metric out there that suggests that ISIS is losing its control over the territory in Iraq, which to me is the real critical issue, is ISIS owning territorial control of a state. That to me is the critical problem, and losing that state, having the black flag come down, I haven't seen any evidence that suggests that that's in the cards.
James, ISIS just released a video threatening Washington. Do you think the group is capable of planning and carrying out a similar attack here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so there's kind of good news and bad news. Is the fact that ISIS released a video saying they're going to do something means nothing. If people remember back on previous 4th of July, ISIS claimed they were going to do attacks on 4th of July. Nothing happened. ISIS has actually claimed credit for other people's terrorist attacks. They've claimed credit for other people have done. So ISIS lots of times makes boasts and doesn't fulfill them. On the other hand, and that's the not good news, is if you look at the kind of resources that went into pulling off the Paris attack or the bombings in Lebanon, for example, or even perhaps the amount of resources that went into taking down the Egyptian airliner, this is a kind of resources that almost any terrorist group could muster. So it's not a question of capability. It's not a lot of capability, and it's certainly not a question of intent. They have that. The only question is can they get through the defenses against that? And my concern is if you're always playing defense, sooner or later, somebody's going to score.
James, let me ask you about a notion that some people are floating, the idea that ISIS reaching outside of Iraq and Syria is actually a sign of weakness because it is shrinking territory there and turning to other places where it may be strategically easier for them to have a quote-unquote victory. What do you make of that idea?
I don't think it's necessarily a sign of weakness because we haven't really shown any metrics that demonstrably demonstrate that ISIS is losing its grip over Iraq. But it is, I think, inevitable. I mean, it does go to the core ISIS narrative. In 2014, when they declared a caliphate, essentially they said they are the inheritor of the historic Islamic State. And as such, in order to sustain that narrative, they have to be seen as successful and powerful. So certainly absorbing thousands of bombing strikes and drone attacks and offenses by the Kurds and Shia militias and something shows that they're strong because they're hanging in there. But I don't think that's good enough. I don't think to sustain that narrative they can have the Russians bomb them.
All right, that was James Carafano in Washington.